Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal, and in today's video, we'll be taking a look at the Mythic Plus dungeons for Legion Timewalking. It's actually such a cool thing that they decided to bring in Mythic Pluses for this Timewalking event, because this is where Mythic Plus dungeons were basically invented. The Mythic Pluses you run today, the Mythic Pluses you ran in BFA, Mythic Pluses of Legion, this is where it all started. It's such a unique way to bring something like this to the game. And in today's video, I just wanted to take a look at it a little closer, show you guys the brand new affix for this event, because they did come up with a new seasonal affix just for the Timewalking, and show you off some of the good old nostalgia. Most of you guys are regular watchers, aren't subscribed, hit subscribe, hit the bell, what are you doing? It helps out the channel tremendously, and if you enjoy these kind of 9.1 update content, give the video a like. Let's first show off the new Mythic Plus affix. It is called Infernal. Infernal is very similar to the Season 2 Mythic Plus affix of Shadowlands, where throughout the dungeon are sprinkled a couple of events that summons a Legion commando. So next to the bosses you'll see Legion consoles, and interacting with that console summons that Legion invasion. When you interact with it, it summons a Legion commando. There are 3 of them in the PTR right now, maybe Blizzard will fiddle with more, but right now we got the big dude, we got the eyeball boss, and the spider boss. When activating the beacon, you summon these mini bosses, and the mini bosses are going to summon the adds while the mini bosses are up. The adds are generally going to be different depending on the mini boss you're fighting, like a spider boss summons spiders. And you also have Infernals dropping from the sky, but as long as the player soaks the impact location, you won't have any extra adds to deal with while fighting the mini boss. The spider boss is going to throw down webs on the ground. These webs buff any enemies you're fighting, so it reduces their damage that they take quite significantly. So just make sure to keep the boss moving at all times. The second mechanic of the spider boss is going to be Shadow Ambush. This will do AoE damage if any of your allies are caught inside of it, so just move out of the way. So the Infiltrator Doraxes, which is the spider mini boss, that fight is not super difficult. As long as you're constantly moving to keep things out of the spider's web, then you should mostly be fine. The next mini boss is going to be Commando Baramus. This guy doesn't really do too much. You'll still have the same mechanics of Infernal dropping, as well as the adds joining the fight. His main mechanic is going to be a buff that he puts on himself, as well as nearby demons with Battle Frenzy. This is an enrage style mechanic, and as long as you have a D enrage, you can remove it off of the main big boss, but the adds will also gain the buff as well. The adds are all stunnable, so having some sort of AoE stun in the group will definitely help. Besides that, Baramus just kind of bombards the general area you're fighting with more green demon fire, and just as long as you're staying out of it, then you should be for the most part fine. This guy is probably the most straightforward out of the demon commanders. The last one is the eyeball boss, which is Observer Ongrax. The adds that he summons, 2 of them are going to be casters and 2 of them are going to just do melee damage. The casters should get interrupted because they do a bit of damage. The boss has a debuff mechanic where he'll mark 2 players and he'll put a vulnerability debuff, making them take 50% more damage and be slower by 50%. He also has this I-beam blast, but majority of the groups are going to interrupt this guy pretty regularly. So I've never seen just how much damage he does, but I would imagine on high keys, it probably does quite a bit. The way this affix works is if you pull the boss that has the beacon next to it, the beacon and the adds inside of it, the Legion Invasion, will be pulled with the boss. So for the Mythic Pluses, you have the choice of either doing the beacon and the boss separately in 2 different pulls, or just pull them both together and nuke everything down in big AoE. Which is probably a good thing that Blizzard decided to soft cap a lot of the AoE by kind of sort of removing some of the caps on AoE, so at least more classes can hit more targets. I think it's really dope that they added a brand new affix just for the Timewalking event. I think it's really cool and unique because Legion back then didn't really have any seasonal affixes, and this one is very familiar to some of the other affixes that we've had in the past, but it doesn't really give you this kiss and curse mechanic. Like the current Shadowlands affix of Season 2, the Domination affix, you have these adds that you can slay them and get these Torghast powers to use inside of the dungeon to hopefully make your runs easier. Or you can avoid them completely, but the negative debuff effects from those adds transfer over to the final boss of the instance. So there you can either choose to bypass them, saving some time, but then the final boss is going to be more challenging, or you kill them all, collect these powers to hopefully make your dungeon run easier. Well, this one you don't really have a choice of whether you want to do them or not. You have to do them. You can just choose to do them with the boss or not. But with how much uncapped there is to some of the AoE abilities, with the soft cap for 5 targets and soft cap to 8 targets, it might be more feasible just to pull these guys into the boss and AoE down, because well, more classes can actually AoE properly. So with all these adds getting summoned, the Demon Invasion, it's going to allow a lot of classes this uncapped potential AoE to really shine. But that's everything that's brand new, but let's talk about everything that is different. One of them being the uncaps, or at least soft caps to AoE. In Legion, we had 0 caps in AoE. It was actually kind of fun just doing a big crab pull while the tank pulls, I don't know, 30, 40 crabs together from the forest, and they just go marching down line. And you had a bunch of classes with big AoE stuns and massive AoE CC, huge AoE slows, and just being able to hit every single mob. I mean, everyone's screens as all the spell effects would just come online. Everybody would just be losing frames, but having so much fun blasting all these ads. And that's how a lot of the dungeons were timed. You would just pull a bunch of things together and just nuke it all down. And honestly, after having our AoE capped in Shadowlands, it's kind of surreal going back to dungeons and just having your abilities hit everybody. It is like reduced damage in AoE, but at least you could just hit everything in the world. So assassination rogues, phantom knives will poison everything that you touch, but even the soft cap on Crimson Tempest and phantom knives, it still is extra damage regardless. Not saying you'll be able to survive those big AoE pulls. Some classes with coordination definitely will, but it's just awesome to have those abilities all actually just affect everything. Another thing about Legion that I forgot completely is just how hard any cat hits. Anything that's a cat mob or a panther or a tiger, they just one shot. They all have this leap ability that just shreds your healers or any range classes. Whether you're talking about Darkheart Thicket, Blackroot Hold, or Seal of Triumvirate, anything that has a cat anywhere in the dungeon just has this leap mechanic to either the furthest target apart or one of the range classes, or generally your healers. It just does either single target big shred or AoE puts a bleed on everybody. I'm glad that that didn't change though, but I never really thought about it, just how hard hitting all the cats are. Whoever was designing these dungeons definitely was a cat person. But the biggest question is, did these dungeons stand the test of time? Are they really as good as we remember, or are they not? And from the ones that I've got to run, besides the tuning, which there's some stuff they need to do, because some of the boss fights and mechanics are definitely overtuned depending on the key level that you're running, but a lot of them are really good. Maybe a little simpler than I remembered them, because majority of the bosses as a DPS, as a healer, as a tank, don't really look like they have too many mechanics to worry about. Looks like for the most part, there's just 1 or 2 mechanics that you worry based on your role, and that's about it. In comparison to like Battle for Azeroth dungeons or Shadowlands dungeons, where there's a bit more complexity with the bosses, a little bit more you can do defensive wise in order to soak mechanics. There's multiple ways of going about these fights. In Legion, some of them can be cheesed, like Deepbeard. As long as they stack in one place, I don't have to worry about spreading quaking everywhere. And if the rest of the DPS just stack in one spot, you don't have to worry about moving from a corner of a boss room. So then the wins don't really matter that much. And as long as you have enough space to avoid the water geysers, you're good to go. There's quite a lot of bosses like that throughout Legion dungeons, like the Patrol Captain, the first boss of Court of Stars. He's pretty easy to do. As long as you have a rogue or an alchemist, you can poison this vial that he drinks, and that takes the boss from 30% to 0. So you only just have to burn through 70% of his health. He has 2 mechanics that are both just dodge out of the way. One is like a frontal and a backwards column, and the other is just a line across. And as long as you're moving your character, you should not get hit. Then there's a lockdown mechanic where he'll put a debuff on everybody. You can jump in order to remove a stack of that debuff. The debuff hurts a lot, so that's probably overtuned. But also jumping did not remove any of the stacks, which I'm pretty sure caused a lot of the groups to either use immunities to bypass this, things like Hand of Freedom, Cloak of Shadows, Vanish from Rogues, because anything that breaks movement slows also removes the debuff, and I'm pretty sure it caused a lot of groups wipes day 1 of PTR. So hopefully that'll be fixed in the future, but besides a mechanic where you press spacebar and 2 things that you dodge, that's it. The boss is extremely easy. There really isn't much going on here. I mean, it's just Blizzard trying to make the bosses harder and more interesting, and I'm glad that they do, but going back to some of the bosses, you're like, wait, that's it? That's all we're doing is just DPSing, dodging, and jumping? I don't hate it, but it's just, I forgot what the mechanics were like, just how simple some of these bosses were. But it's also probably good that these bosses were simple, because on Tyrannical and Legion, they were notorious for one-shotting groups, just because it was Tyrannical weak. But either way, this was awesome experience to go through. Legion dungeons are really, really fun. In the Timewalking, I mean, it's just full of nostalgia, full of really good memories, full of really good moments from back then. It's going to be fun relearning how to do some of these fights, because our class has changed a bit. These dungeons are going to have to be changed a bit as well in terms of the tuning, but I'm pretty sure Blizzard will be able to make him fairly challenging while also fairly accessible to more people. This is going to be a lot of fun, just having more Mythic Plus dungeons to run on your weekly basis and having those work towards your vault as well. I think it's a really good change, and I cannot wait to try them out once they hit live. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you think about the Legion Mythic Plus dungeon content coming up in 9.1.5. And as always, I'll see all of you in another video.